So here's a common scenario. You want to live here, but you also want to buy your first home. But hey, why not do both? Rent vesting is all about living where you want and buying where you can afford, and it's more and more popular. I'm going to meet Cayla Owins. She rents in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, but 5 years ago she bought a place in Bendigo in regional Victoria.
I have to admit my house was at a great price. I purchased it for, I always forget, but it was about $360,000. And if you were to compare that to somewhere here in Melbourne, I think you'd be very lucky to purchase a one-bedroom apartment in an outer suburb.
And how important is knowing the market when choosing where to buy?
I think it's vital. You definitely want to be buying somewhere where there's going to be continual growth, developments occurring, new infrastructure and so forth.
So does the rent cover the mortgage repayments or any other extra costs?
Yeah, I predominantly focus on the rent does pay the repayment. However, there are extra little bits and pieces that need to be paid for from time to time. I'm quite good with my savings, so I've always got like what I call a home loan account where I put my spare money in, and when those bills and insurances need to be paid, that's where I draw from.
Does it feel weird to be a landlord and a tenant?
It does. I get to live the best of both worlds, really. In the long term, I have got an investment there. It's always going to be there. And that by renting, I've got then the freedom to move around as well. That, you know, I love the suburb where I'm living now in Melbourne. But if I wanted to pack up and move to a different suburb or possibly interstate, then I've got that freedom to do that.
In all, about 15% of people who rent also own a property. It's mostly young people who live in the big cities, where inner city living comes with a big price tag. Many investors focus on the tax benefits of owning an investment property. For instance, many of the costs like interest repayments, rates and water charges can be used as tax deductions. Then there's negative gearing. That's when the rent you receive from your tenants is less than what you're paying in interest and other costs. And that means you're making a loss, and you might be able to claim that loss against your income so that you pay less tax. If you're negatively gearing a property, you'd be hoping that any future capital gains, when the price rises above what you paid for the property, will make up for those losses. People often forget about positively gearing, and that's when the income you receive from your tenants is higher than what you're paying in interest and other costs. Now that's good too, because you're actually making some money from your investments, but the downside is that you might have to pay some tax on that income. In general, if you're on a higher income, it might be best to choose a negatively geared property to reduce your taxable income. If you're on a lower income, it might be best to choose a positively geared property to bump up your income a bit. So let's sum it all up. The pros: you get your foot in the door of the property market, and you can still live where you want to live and have the flexibility to move if your circumstances change. You get some additional income, and you might be able to access tax deductions. And it's not an emotional purchase, so you can make ruthless decisions based on the potential of the area, like schools and jobs. But there are some cons to rent vesting. You still have to be a tenant, and you'll probably miss out on the first home buyer's grant. And when it comes time to sell, you'll probably have to pay capital gains tax, and that means any profit you make will be taxed. You may have to find extra money to pay for maintenance and other costs. Rental prices may fall, and it can be challenging to find the right tenant. And remember, it's a pretty long-term investment. Property in Australia tends to increase in value over time, but there's no guarantees that yours will. So make sure you do your sums. And don't forget, this is just general advice. If you need specific advice, please see a professional. Good luck at the auction, and I'll see you next time.